If there is one quiet misconception about aging, it is the belief that movement must become harder, longer, or more exhausting to remain effective, when in truth the body after 60 responds best not to force, but to precision. And today I want you to consider how a simple chair-based movement can awaken muscles, circulation, and balance more deeply than walking ever could, not because walking is bad, but because the aging body is no longer optimized for repetition alone, it is optimized for intelligent engagement. Number 1, after 60, the body quietly renegotiates its priorities. And one of the most important shifts is the move away from endurance as the primary marker of health towards stability as the foundation of all movement. This is not a decline, but an evolution. In earlier decades, the body could tolerate repetitive motion with minimal consequence because joints were resilient, reaction times were fast, and stabilizing muscles worked automatically in the background. Walking fit perfectly into that phase of life because it rewarded repetition and cardiovascular rhythm. But as we age, the background systems begin to ask for attention. The small muscles that protect joints, align posture, and coordinate balance start to weaken not dramatically, but subtly, and it is this subtle weakening that often leads to stiffness, instability, and loss of confidence in movement rather than any sudden injury. A chair-based exercise speaks directly to this shift because it removes the demand for forward motion and replaces it with intentional control, asking the body not how far it can go, but how well it can organize itself in space. Stability is not about being still. It is about being prepared. When you sit and move with awareness, the deep muscles of the core, hips, and spine must engage continuously to maintain alignment. These muscles do not generate large, visible movements, but they are responsible for keeping joints centered and distributing force evenly. Walking, especially habitual walking at a comfortable pace, often allows the stronger muscles to take over while the stabilizers disengage. Over time, this creates imbalance. One side becomes dominant, posture subtly shifts, and joints begin to absorb forces they were never meant to carry alone. In contrast, a seated movement removes momentum and demands precision. Each lift, extension, or rotation requires the nervous system to coordinate multiple muscle groups simultaneously, reinforcing patterns of control rather than repetition. There is also an important psychological dimension to stability that is often overlooked. After 60, many people begin to move with caution, not because they are weak, but because they are uncertain. The fear of losing balance, the memory of a past fall, or the anticipation of pain changes how the brain approaches movement. Walking, while familiar, still carries the implicit risk of missteps, uneven surfaces, or fatigue. A chair-based exercise eliminates this threat, allowing the brain to relax its protective guarding. When the brain feels safe, it allows muscles to activate more fully and fluidly. This safety-driven activation is critical because strength gained under conditions of fear is limited and inconsistent, while strength gained under conditions of confidence becomes reliable and transferable to daily life. Stability-focused movement also retrains proprioception, the body's internal sense of position. With age, proprioceptive feedback becomes less precise, making movements feel less certain even when strength is adequate. Seated exercises slow the process down, giving the nervous system time to register joint angles, muscle tension, and weight distribution. This slow feedback loop sharpens awareness and improves coordination. Over time, this enhanced internal sensing translates into better balance when standing and walking, even though the exercise itself was performed while seated. This is why such movements can feel deceptively simple while producing profound improvements in functional mobility. Another key aspect of stability is joint protection. Joints thrive on alignment and controlled loading. When movement is rushed or repetitive, joints are exposed to uneven forces that accelerate wear. Seated exercises allow controlled ranges of motion that nourish joint cartilage through gentle compression and release. This nourishment is not about intensity. It is about rhythm and precision. The body learns to move without bracing or collapsing, preserving joint integrity and reducing inflammation. Walking, while beneficial for circulation, does not always provide this level of targeted joint care, especially if posture or gait has already been compromised. Stability also forms the foundation for all other forms of strength. Without it, power becomes inefficient and sometimes harmful. Chair-based exercises build strength from the inside out, starting with alignment and control before progressing to larger movements. This sequence mirrors how the body naturally develops movement patterns and is particularly important after 60, when recovery is slower and the margin for error is smaller. By reinforcing stability first, the body becomes more resilient, reducing the risk of injury and increasing confidence in everyday tasks like standing up, reaching, or turning. Importantly, stability is deeply connected to longevity. Falls are one of the leading causes of loss of independence in older adults, and falls are rarely caused by weak muscles alone. They are usually the result of poor coordination, delayed reaction, or lack of postural control. Chair-based exercises directly address these factors by training the nervous system to respond smoothly and efficiently. This training does not rely on speed or endurance. It relies on awareness. Each controlled movement strengthens the connection between brain and body, reinforcing patterns that protect against sudden loss of balance. Stability-focused movement also respects the body's energy economy. After 60, fatigue accumulates more quickly, and excessive exertion can trigger inflammation rather than adaptation. Seated exercises allow meaningful muscular engagement without draining the system. This balance between challenge and recovery is essential for sustainable progress. The body adapts best when it is stimulated but not overwhelmed, and stability exercises strike this balance elegantly by working deep systems that have been neglected rather than exhausting already dominant ones. Perhaps most importantly, this approach reframes exercise not as a test of willpower, but as a dialogue with the body. Instead of pushing through discomfort, you listen for alignment, breath, and control. This dialogue fosters respect for the body's current capacity while gently expanding it. Over time, stability becomes a felt experience rather than an abstract concept. Movements feel smoother, posture feels lighter, and confidence returns not because the body is being forced to perform, but because it has been taught to organize itself efficiently again, creating a foundation of control that supports every other form of movement without strain or fear. As the body ages, circulation and joint nourishment become less about speed and more about quality. And this is where the difference between walking and a carefully designed chair exercise becomes most apparent. Movement has always been understood as a way to move blood, but blood flow alone is not the full story of how tissues stay healthy. Joints, tendons, ligaments, and cartilage do not receive rich blood supply in the same way muscles do. They rely on pressure changes created by controlled movement to absorb nutrients and remove waste. After 60, when circulation naturally slows and connective tissues lose elasticity, these pressure changes become essential rather than optional. Walking moves the legs forward and back in a familiar pattern, but it often does so at a pace that favors momentum over precision, allowing joints to passively follow along rather than actively engage in nourishment. A chair-based exercise changes this dynamic entirely because it removes momentum from the equation. When you are seated, every movement must be initiated deliberately. The muscles contract slowly, the joints move through controlled ranges, and the surrounding tissues experience gentle compression and release. This acts like a pump system inside the joint itself. Each contraction pushes synovial fluid into the cartilage, and each release allows that fluid to carry away metabolic waste. This internal washing process is what keeps joints resilient and pain-free, yet it is often missing in habitual walking, especially when posture has adapted to stiffness or imbalance over time. Inflammation plays a quiet but powerful role in joint health after 60. Low-grade inflammation can stiffen tissues, reduce mobility, and amplify pain signals even in the absence of structural damage. Rapid or repetitive movement can sometimes aggravate this inflammatory state, especially when joints are already sensitive. Chair exercises allow the body to work within a pain-free range, encouraging circulation without triggering defensive tension. When muscles contract slowly and rhythmically, they signal safety to the nervous system, which in turn reduces inflammatory signaling. This creates a feedback loop in which movement soothes rather than irritates, allowing joints to gradually regain mobility without resistance. Another often overlooked aspect of joint nourishment is variability. Joints are designed to move in multiple directions and to experience forces from different angles. Walking, while natural, is repetitive by design. The same joints move in nearly identical patterns with each step, which can lead to uneven wear when alignment is less than ideal. Seated exercises introduce variety. Rotations, extensions, lifts, and controlled shifts of weight expose joints to a broader range of motion. This variability stimulates different areas of cartilage and connective tissue, distributing stress more evenly and reducing the risk of localized degeneration. Over time, this diversity of movement supports joint longevity in a way that repetitive walking cannot fully replicate. Circulation itself also responds differently to seated movement. When muscles contract strongly and slowly, they compress veins and help push blood back toward the heart. This venous return is especially important after 60, when valves in the veins may not function as efficiently and swelling in the lower extremities becomes more common. Chair exercises that involve deliberate leg engagement improve this return flow without the gravitational challenges of standing. This can reduce pooling of blood in the legs, ease pressure on the cardiovascular system, and improve overall circulation efficiency in a way that feels supportive rather than exhausting. Tendons and ligaments benefit uniquely from controlled loading. These tissues adapt slowly and respond poorly to sudden or excessive force, particularly with age. Walking places repeated low-level stress on tendons, which is generally beneficial, but it does not always provide the slow, intentional loading required to stimulate repair and resilience. Seated exercises allow tendons to experience sustained tension followed by complete release, a pattern that encourages collagen remodeling and strength. This controlled stress improves elasticity and reduces the risk of strains or tears, supporting joint stability and function over time. Joint lubrication is also influenced by temperature and local circulation. Slow, mindful movement increases warmth in targeted areas, making tissues more pliable and receptive to nourishment. Chair exercises create this warmth gradually, without the shock that sometimes accompanies brisk walking in cooler environments. This gradual warming reduces stiffness and prepares joints for daily activities, making movements like standing up, climbing stairs, or reaching overhead feel smoother and less effortful throughout the day. Pain perception is another critical factor. After 60, the nervous system often becomes more sensitive to joint signals, interpreting stiffness or minor discomfort as a warning to restrict movement. This protective response can lead to further stiffness and reduced circulation, creating a cycle of limitation. Seated exercises interrupt this cycle by allowing movement in a safe, supported context. As joints move without pain, the nervous system recalibrates its expectations, reducing unnecessary alarm. This recalibration makes subsequent movement more comfortable and less guarded, even when transitioning back to standing or walking activities. The psychological comfort of seated movement also enhances physiological outcomes. When the body feels supported, muscles relax more fully between contractions, allowing blood and fluid to flow freely. Tension restricts circulation, while relaxation enhances it. Chair exercises encourage this relaxed engagement by removing the fear of falling or losing balance. This sense of safety is not merely emotional. It directly influences muscle tone, vascular response, and joint mobility. Over time, the body learns that movement is not a threat, but a source of nourishment and relief. Perhaps the most profound advantage of chair-based circulation and joint nourishment is consistency. These exercises can be performed daily without fatigue or soreness accumulating. Consistency is what allows small physiological benefits to compound into meaningful change. Joints receive regular nourishment, inflammation remains controlled, circulation stays efficient, and tissues retain their capacity to adapt. Walking may still play a role, but it is the precision and sustainability of seated movement that ensures joints and connective tissues are cared for at the level they require after 60, allowing the body to move with ease, comfort, and quiet confidence rather than enduring movement as a necessary strain. As the body ages, the nervous system becomes more cautious, not because it is failing, but because it has learned through decades of experience that recovery takes longer and risks carry greater consequences. This shift in neurological behavior profoundly shapes how movement is executed after 60. Every action is filtered through a subtle assessment of safety, balance, and potential pain. Walking, while familiar, still demands constant micro-adjustments to maintain balance, respond to uneven surfaces, and manage fatigue. These demands keep the nervous system in a state of low-level vigilance. In contrast, a chair-based exercise removes the primary threat that triggers this vigilance: the possibility of falling. When the body is supported, the nervous system can redirect its resources from protection to precision, allowing muscles to engage more fully and movement patterns to become clearer and more efficient. Safety is the gateway to neurological learning. When the brain perceives threat, it prioritizes survival over refinement. Muscles tighten, movements become rigid, and coordination narrows to reduce risk. This protective strategy is useful in emergencies but counterproductive for building strength, balance, and confidence. Seated exercise creates an environment in which the brain does not need to defend. With the fear of instability removed, the nervous system allows a wider range of muscle activation. This openness enables deeper engagement of stabilizing muscles that are often inhibited when standing or walking under perceived risk. Over time, this safe activation rebuilds trust between brain and body, which is essential for long-term mobility. Motor patterns, the learned sequences of muscle activation that produce movement, degrade when they are not used or when they are executed under stress. After 60, stress becomes a frequent companion to movement, whether due to joint discomfort, balance concerns, or fatigue. Chair exercises slow movement down, giving the nervous system time to observe and correct these patterns. Slow, deliberate motion enhances sensory feedback from muscles and joints, allowing the brain to fine-tune coordination. This refinement does not require intensity. It requires attention. Each controlled movement reinforces accurate signaling pathways, strengthening the neural maps that guide motion throughout the body. Balance itself is a neurological skill as much as a physical one. It relies on the integration of visual input, inner ear signals, and proprioceptive feedback from muscles and joints. With age, these inputs may become less synchronized, leading to delayed responses and instability. Seated exercises isolate and train these systems without overwhelming them. By practicing controlled shifts of weight, limb movements, and posture adjustments while seated, the nervous system learns to process sensory information more efficiently. This training enhances balance even in standing and walking because the underlying neural coordination has been strengthened in a low-risk environment. The concept of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and rewire itself, remains active throughout life, but it becomes more selective with age. The nervous system adapts most readily when it feels safe and when changes are introduced gradually. Chair exercises align perfectly with these conditions. They provide repeated, consistent stimuli that reinforce positive movement patterns without triggering defensive responses. Over time, the brain begins to anticipate stability rather than threat, reducing unnecessary muscle tension and improving fluidity of motion. This neurological adaptation is subtle but powerful, reshaping how the body moves in everyday life. Fear of falling is one of the most significant barriers to movement after 60. Even individuals who have never fallen may carry an implicit fear shaped by awareness of vulnerability. This fear alters posture, shortens stride length, and reduces arm swing during walking, all of which compromise balance and efficiency. Seated exercise bypasses this fear entirely. By practicing strength and coordination in a context where falling is impossible, the nervous system rebuilds confidence. This confidence then transfers to standing activities, making walking feel more secure and less effortful. Another important aspect of nervous system involvement is timing. Muscles must activate in precise sequences to produce smooth movement. With age, these sequences can become delayed or disrupted, leading to stiffness or compensatory patterns. Chair exercises emphasize controlled initiation and termination of movement, sharpening timing and coordination. This practice improves the brain's ability to predict and manage forces, reducing the likelihood of sudden, destabilizing movements. Over time, this improved timing enhances reaction speed and postural adjustments, which are critical for preventing falls. The autonomic nervous system, which regulates stress responses, also plays a role in movement quality. When stress levels are elevated, sympathetic activity increases, raising muscle tone and reducing fine motor control. Seated exercises promote parasympathetic activation by combining gentle movement with steady breathing. This shift calms the nervous system, lowering stress hormones and improving insulin sensitivity and circulation as secondary benefits. A calm nervous system supports more efficient movement, making exercise feel restorative rather than draining. Pain perception is heavily influenced by the nervous system. After 60, chronic or recurring pain can sensitize neural pathways, amplifying discomfort even during benign movements. Seated exercise offers a way to move without triggering pain, which gradually retrains the nervous system to interpret movement as safe. This desensitization reduces pain over time and expands the range of motion available without discomfort. The brain learns that movement does not necessarily lead to harm, weakening the association between activity and pain. Cognitive engagement is another benefit of chair-based movement. Coordinating controlled movements requires attention, planning, and awareness, all of which stimulate cognitive networks. This cognitive motor integration supports brain health and reinforces the connection between thought and action. Walking, especially when habitual, often becomes automatic and less cognitively engaging. Seated exercises reintroduce mindful attention to movement, strengthening neural circuits that support both physical and cognitive function. Ultimately, the nervous system thrives on clarity and predictability. Chair exercises provide both. They create a stable platform for exploration, allowing the brain to refine movement without fear. This refinement translates into improved balance, coordination, and confidence across all forms of activity. By addressing the nervous system directly, seated exercise does more than strengthen muscles. It restores the dialogue between brain and body, enabling movement to feel natural, controlled, and trustworthy again, even in the later decades of life. As the body moves beyond 60, muscle preservation becomes one of the most decisive factors in determining not just strength, but independence, metabolic stability, and long-term resilience. And this is where the comparison between walking and a single well-designed chair exercise becomes especially revealing. Muscle tissue is not merely for movement. It is a metabolic organ that governs how the body handles glucose, maintains joint integrity, supports posture, and protects against frailty. With age, muscle loss accelerates through a process known as sarcopenia, driven by hormonal shifts, reduced neural activation, and insufficient mechanical challenge. Walking, while beneficial for cardiovascular health, often fails to provide the level of muscular stimulus required to meaningfully slow or reverse this process, particularly in the muscles most responsible for stability and metabolic regulation. Chair-based exercises, when performed with slow, controlled resistance, directly challenge muscle fibers in a way that walking rarely does. Muscles respond not to distance or duration, but to tension and intent. When a movement is slowed down, muscles must remain engaged for longer periods, recruiting both fast and slow-twitch fibers. This prolonged engagement sends a clear signal to the body that muscle tissue is still needed. Over time, this signal stimulates protein synthesis and preserves muscle mass even in the absence of heavy weights. For older adults, this approach is not only safer, but often more effective because it aligns with the body's reduced recovery capacity. Metabolic health is deeply intertwined with muscle function. Muscle tissue is one of the primary destinations for glucose after meals. When muscle mass declines, glucose has fewer places to go, leading to elevated blood sugar and increased insulin demand. Walking uses glucose during the activity itself, but it does little to expand the body's capacity to store and manage glucose long-term. Chair exercises, by strengthening muscles, increase this capacity. Each gain in muscle quality improves insulin sensitivity, allowing glucose to be absorbed more efficiently and reducing strain on the pancreas. This effect extends beyond the exercise session, influencing blood sugar regulation throughout the day and night. The type of muscle activation also matters. Walking primarily engages muscles in a repetitive, low-load pattern. While this supports endurance, it does not sufficiently stimulate the deeper muscles responsible for joint stability and posture. Chair exercises can target these muscles directly through controlled lifts, presses, and extensions that require coordination between multiple muscle groups. This integrated activation improves functional strength, the kind of strength needed to stand up from a chair, climb stairs, or carry groceries. Functional strength is what determines whether daily tasks remain easy or become exhausting, and it is best developed through intentional resistance rather than repetitive motion. Hormonal responses to exercise also change with age. After 60, anabolic hormones that support muscle growth, such as growth hormone and testosterone, decline naturally. However, muscles remain responsive to mechanical tension. Slow, resistance-based chair exercises stimulate local growth factors within muscle tissue, partially compensating for systemic hormonal decline. Walking, especially at a comfortable pace, does not generate sufficient tension to trigger this response. As a result, walking maintains what strength remains, but rarely builds new capacity. Chair exercises, by contrast, create an opportunity for adaptation even later in life. Another critical aspect of muscle preservation is neuromuscular efficiency. Strength is not solely about muscle size. It is also about how effectively the nervous system recruits muscle fibers. With age, this recruitment becomes less efficient, contributing to weakness even when muscle mass is relatively preserved. Chair exercises emphasize deliberate activation and control, improving the communication between nerves and muscles. This improved signaling enhances strength without requiring large increases in muscle size, making movements feel easier and more coordinated. Walking, being largely automatic, does little to refine this neuromuscular connection once basic patterns are established. Muscle strength also protects joints by absorbing forces that would otherwise be transmitted directly to cartilage and connective tissue. Weak muscles force joints to bear loads they were not designed to handle, accelerating wear and increasing pain. Chair exercises strengthen the muscles surrounding joints in a controlled manner, improving alignment and reducing joint stress. This protective effect is particularly important after 60, when joint tissues are less forgiving and inflammation is more likely to persist. Walking, while low impact, does not always correct imbalances or strengthen stabilizing muscles sufficiently to protect vulnerable joints. From a metabolic perspective, muscle acts as a reservoir for energy and amino acids. During illness, stress, or recovery, the body draws on muscle tissue to support immune function and healing. Preserving muscle mass therefore supports resilience beyond movement alone. Chair exercises contribute to this reserve by maintaining muscle quality, ensuring the body has resources available when needed. Walking, while beneficial for circulation and mood, does not significantly enhance this reserve. Consistency again plays a decisive role. Muscle preservation requires regular stimulation, but older bodies recover more slowly from intense exertion. Chair exercises strike an optimal balance by providing sufficient challenge without excessive fatigue. This makes daily or near-daily practice sustainable. Walking, while accessible, may be limited by weather, joint discomfort, or energy levels, leading to inconsistency. Muscle responds to what is done most often, not what is done occasionally, and chair-based strength work fits more easily into daily routines. There is also a psychological component to muscle health. Feeling strong reinforces confidence, which encourages movement and engagement with life. Chair exercises provide measurable progress, such as increased control, smoother motion, or the ability to perform more repetitions. These improvements reinforce motivation and create a positive feedback loop. Walking progress is harder to perceive beyond distance or speed, which may plateau with age and discourage continued effort. Ultimately, muscle preservation after 60 is not about achieving youthful strength, but about maintaining enough capacity to support independence, metabolic stability, and quality of life. Chair exercises meet the aging body where it is, offering a precise, effective stimulus that walking alone cannot provide. By challenging muscles intentionally and consistently, these exercises transform movement into a tool for cellular health, metabolic balance, and long-term vitality, ensuring that strength remains an ally rather than a limiting factor as the years advance. Sustainability becomes the quiet measure of success after 60, because the body no longer rewards bursts of effort followed by long recovery. It responds to patterns that can be repeated without resistance. This is where a single chair exercise reveals its deepest advantage, not through intensity or novelty, but through its ability to fit seamlessly into daily life. When movement feels approachable, it stops being something that must be scheduled or negotiated and becomes something that simply happens. This consistency is not a minor detail. It is the biological language the body understands best. Muscles, joints, and the nervous system adapt to what they experience regularly, and a movement that can be performed every day without fatigue or fear creates an environment where adaptation becomes inevitable. The aging body is highly sensitive to overload. After 60, recovery process is slow, inflammation lingers longer, and small stresses accumulate more easily. Exercises that demand high effort or long duration may feel productive in the moment but often lead to soreness or fatigue that discourages repetition. Chair-based movement avoids this trap by delivering meaningful engagement without overwhelming the system. The body finishes the movement session feeling energized rather than depleted, which is a powerful signal. When the nervous system associates exercise with relief instead of strain, it allows that behavior to become habitual rather than resisted. Sustainability is also about accessibility. Walking depends on external conditions such as weather, terrain, footwear, and time availability. A chair exercise removes these variables entirely. It can be performed in any environment, at any time of day, and with minimal preparation. This removal of barriers significantly increases adherence, especially for older adults who may face unpredictable energy levels or mobility limitations. The simpler the entry point, the more likely the behavior becomes ingrained, and once ingrained, the physiological benefits compound quietly over time. There is a subtle psychological shift that occurs when exercise no longer feels like a task. Chair-based movement feels supportive rather than demanding, which reduces mental resistance. This matters because psychological friction is often a greater obstacle than physical limitation. When an exercise feels achievable even on low-energy days, it maintains continuity. Continuity, not intensity, drives long-term adaptation. Over weeks and months, small daily movements produce cumulative improvements in strength, circulation, balance, and confidence that occasional vigorous sessions cannot match. The ritual aspect of sustainable movement should not be underestimated. Performing a chair exercise at the same time each day anchors it into routine. The body begins to anticipate the movement, priming muscles and joints in advance. This anticipation improves readiness and reduces stiffness, making the movement feel smoother each time. Walking, while habitual for some, often lacks this ritualized consistency, particularly when external factors intervene. A seated exercise, tied to a daily anchor such as morning routines or evening wind down, becomes part of the body's internal clock. Sustainability also supports emotional well-being. Regular movement that feels safe and manageable reinforces a sense of agency. After 60, many individuals experience a gradual narrowing of perceived capability, often driven by fear of injury or decline. Chair exercises gently counter this narrative by demonstrating what the body can still do reliably. Each session reinforces competence rather than limitation. This positive reinforcement encourages continued engagement not only with exercise, but with other aspects of life that require confidence in physical ability. The physiological benefits of sustainability extend beyond muscles and joints. Regular movement supports cardiovascular health by maintaining circulation and vascular elasticity without imposing excessive strain. It supports metabolic stability by improving insulin sensitivity through repeated muscle activation. It supports immune function by reducing chronic inflammation. These benefits are not dramatic from a single session, but they accumulate through repetition. The body integrates these signals over time, adjusting baseline function upward rather than reacting temporarily to isolated efforts. Consistency also allows for gradual progression. Because chair exercises are low risk and repeatable, they provide a platform for incremental challenge. Small increases in range of motion, repetition count, or duration can be introduced without disrupting routine. This gradual progression respects the aging body's adaptive capacity, allowing improvements to emerge organically. Walking progression, often measured in distance or speed, may plateau due to joint discomfort or fatigue, limiting further gains. Chair exercises offer more nuanced ways to challenge the body without escalating risk. Another important dimension of sustainability is recovery. Effective exercise supports recovery rather than competing with it. Chair-based movement enhances circulation, which aids in nutrient delivery and waste removal. It maintains joint lubrication and muscle elasticity, reducing stiffness between sessions. This supportive effect means that exercise becomes part of the recovery process rather than something that necessitates recovery afterward. For older adults, this distinction is critical. When movement aids recovery, it can be performed daily without cumulative wear. Social and emotional sustainability also play a role. Chair exercises can be shared, taught, and adapted easily, making them suitable for group settings or guided programs. This social component reinforces adherence and adds enjoyment. Walking may be solitary or constrained by pace differences, limiting shared experience. A simple seated exercise can be performed together, fostering connection and mutual encouragement, which further enhances consistency. Over time, sustainable movement reshapes identity. Exercise is no longer defined by performance metrics or comparison, but by presence and care. This reframing aligns with the needs of the aging body, which values predictability and support. The chair exercise becomes a quiet ally, always available, never demanding more than the body can give on that day. This reliability builds trust. The body responds to trust by releasing tension, improving coordination, and allowing adaptation to unfold naturally. Ultimately, sustainability is the mechanism through which all other benefits are realized. Without it, even the most effective exercise remains theoretical. Chair-based movement succeeds not because it is dramatic, but because it is dependable. It meets the body where it is, invites participation without fear, and rewards consistency with gradual, meaningful change. Over time, this steady engagement transforms movement from an obligation into a form of daily maintenance, preserving strength, confidence, and independence in a way that aligns with the rhythms and realities of life after 60.